Good afternoon, everyone. I think we are about to start. I'm delighted. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I can see it. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the debate on the emerging topic. Has the pandemic changed how the donors perceive the role of nonprofit organizations? My name is Nikola Strachová, and I will be a moderator of today's debate, which is hosted by the Forum 2000 Foundation within the wonderful event, the NGO Market Week for a non-state sector. It's without a doubt that nonprofit organizations represent citizens' bottom-up initiatives that bring concrete actions aimed at particular problems in society and participate in its overall development, even in this very specific period of time. Therefore, we would like to put the important question on the virtual table, how this reality changed the ways of fundraising. And we will try to find the answer with our very special guests. And those are Taťána Plecháčková, a director of Civil Society Development Foundation in the Czech Republic, where she focuses on capacity building of NGO managers and the quality of social services. Next, we have Réka Heszterényi. Réka is responsible for external relations at the Foundation for Democratic Youth based in Budapest. She's also a junior researcher with her interest in integration, European identity, and youth engagement. And finally, it's Filip Pazderski among us, a senior policy analyst and head of the Democracy and Civil Society program at the Institute of Public Affairs in Warsaw. Filip is also one of the vice presidents of the European Civic Forum. And just before we start, I would like to just briefly mention some practical considerations. This event is streamed live on Zoom and Facebook, so please join us at any time and ask your questions in the comments. I will then try to pass them to our speakers. So without further delay, as we have a quite extensive agenda to deal with, I would like to give a floor to Taťána and ask her the first bunch of questions that I will then pass to Réka and Filip as well. So Taťána, please, how would you generally describe the nonprofit sector situation in the Czech Republic in the terms of its role in a society, how the government perceived the nonprofit sector, and what has changed since the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak? So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, and hello to everybody who is watching and listening. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting. Hopefully this discussion will be useful for participants. And to your question, first of all, let's look on data about the sector in the Czech Republic. Only a bit, don't worry. There is more than 140,000 civil sector organizations in the Czech Republic. It's a big amount, it's a huge number. Only 100,000 associations, more than 500 is foundations, 2,000 endowment funds. It means sometimes it's quite difficult to find a trusted organization. What is important is that CSOs or non-profits, how to say, provide key health and social infrastructure in our country, complements the education system, but they are also important cultural institution. And without the activities of non-profits, especially in the social field, the help and support of disabled and elderly people or the poor and homeless people have practically stopped. So it's really important. Although CSOs play an important role, we can feel still increasing political pressure on CSOs or a whole NGO sector. And unfortunately, it's not possible to talk about uniform promotion of the interests of the whole sector. The sector is a bit fragmented, and such interests usually cannot be defined. And Czech society remains highly polarized, I think, in relation to the non-profit sector in Czech. What about the government? The government is rather pragmatic in relation to CSOs, and at the central level, state officials criticize the CSOs all the time. But their activities are still practically partially funded by the state, as they cannot solve the problems that CSO deal with. And what is not such a good number, that public confidence in the CSOs remains generally low. Only 33% of respondents in some surveys trusted non-profit organizations. So it's only a few information about the non-profit sector in the Czech Republic from my side.
Thank you, Taťána. Thank you for sharing. Réka, could you please tell us about the situation in Hungary?
Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And I believe that the situation is very similar in Hungary, because I would say that the role of NGOs is, on the one hand, interest representation. There are many organizations who, for example, offer legal aid for those who cannot afford it. There are those who deal with marginalized people, like homeless people or children in segregates, to help them with online education, also with disabled people. And like Taťána said, we also complement the education system. For example, we at the Foundation for Democratic Youth, we deal with civic education, which is something that is not known in Hungary and which is vital to the functioning of any democracy. So yeah, I would say that we complement official policies or fill in gaps. And also, if you want numbers, I believe that there are about 55,000 people who are engaged in this sector, and we make up about 4% of the GDP. So I would say we are quite useful. And the problem is that there's a shrinking civic space, which means that there are very limited resources and funds we could turn to. And that means that most NGOs turn to foreign or EU funds. However, there are many who lack the organizational, networking, or language capacity to apply for these very, very competitive grants. So yes, on the one hand, there's a competition, also because the media is biased, so we need to publicize ourselves. But there's also a very strong cooperation. There are umbrella organizations, and I believe we've been developing in that part. And how the pandemic situation has changed is, I would say that cooperation with the government in general wasn't really successful before, and this hasn't changed during the pandemic. What has changed, however, is that there was a strengthened cooperation within the sector. So, for example, there was this Hungarian NGO, Ökotárs, who launched a tender to help organizations, mostly in rural areas, to help people with very basic needs, such as food and masks, and help children not to fall out of digital education. So I would say that we compensated for this lack of cooperation with helping each other.
Thank you, Réka. I would like to ask Filip now. Could you please contribute with your insight from Poland?
Sure, of course. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to the organizers, and it's great to be with all of you here today. You raised very important but also broad questions, and we have very limited time. But let me try to give you some insight. So, first of all, when it comes to the to the situation of civic sector CSOs in Poland, it's quite vivid group of entities that was developed after 1989, quite also lively, with support from the foreign donors as well. And also in 1990s, there was really a moment where a large number of CSOs in Poland grew. But this is also the moment when one of the most important problems of Polish civic sector started, because then CSOs started to be developed more as a kind of intermediary organizations being developed on the Western, mostly Western model, mostly coming from the Commonwealth countries like namely UK and USA, and it means that they were more oriented to work with the authorities, with local authorities or central authorities, and not so much to keep communicating about their work with their constituencies. And it meant that year by year, and also with following mechanisms supporting financially work of CSOs that were established in Poland, Polish CSOs become more and more dependent on the public funding. And just recently, the amount of public funding that is used or that compose the budgets of the Polish civic sector is more than 50%. Yeah, it's public funding coming from different levels of authorities, from central to local, and also including European funding, which is a minor part in this part. And this is a problem because because it gives to the authorities quite strong argument to do what the government wants, if the government wants to impose something on the civic sector. And actually, we could observe that this fact was being used by the government that took power in Poland in the autumn 2015, that they started to use this stick and carrot strategies. Using smear campaigns against especially selected CSOs, telling that the CSOs are mostly representing political opposition, they are misusing public funds, they are not working for the interests of the society. And because, as I told you, many CSOs were more oriented to cooperate with the authorities, they missed explaining with proper language, use very easy accessible language, the reasons why they are working to the local communities. And for the local communities, it was more difficult to understand for singular citizens as well, why we need this CSOs. And because of that, it was much easier for the authorities to attack CSOs. So it was something that we were observing over the last years when it comes to the situation of civic sector in Poland. What also influenced growing polarization also within the sector, because in the same time also our government was also started to establish and financially support more and more their own sector, the organization that were representing the same ideological orientation as well of Polish government, rather conservative, you can imagine, and so on and so forth. And in this way, we reached COVID-19. I'm giving you a very brief history of the sector, of the situation of the sector. And actually, the COVID-19 only deepens these problems, because for many CSOs, we have other speakers told you about the numbers. Yeah, I mean, in Poland there are more or less 100,000 operating and registered CSOs working on and doing many different things. Yeah, I mean, the biggest part works in culture and social service, but I mean, the civic organizations are doing everything what you can imagine. But many of them were affected, and especially were affected those ones that are delivering, working in this most important areas of work for the civic sector in Poland. So like culture, social services, sport as well, because all of these activities couldn't be conducted in the way how they were conducted before, and it also meant financial problems for the civic sector. It also meant the question what we do with our projects, with our budgets of the projects, if we cannot implement our activities as we plan them to be implemented, and so on and so forth. We will get to the point to discuss what happened later, what the government has done or didn't have done. But if you ask me about this general picture of the civic sector in Poland, I would say that this is the fact that the growing polarization and also caused at least partially by the government, by the accusations and by using funds to support in larger extent those NGOs that work in ideological line of the government, but also the civic sector that on the other hand shows quite strong resilience and flexibility to react to the situation. And I hope that we will also be able to get back to this to discuss this in a bit more details.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Filip. I see that we have already one question in the comments. We will try to answer it at the end of the discussion. And now I will try to ask you another question. Maybe, Filip, you have already tackled it a little bit. We have been fighting COVID-19 for over a year now. How should the government approach to the non-profit sector in this situation look like? What are the areas where the government could help? Maybe, Filip, you could start. Maybe you could provide us more academical policy insight because of your institution.
Yeah, I mean, I'm following what's going on and monitoring what's going on in the sector as well. But I mean, in general, what we may say, what would be really desired and expect from the side of the civic sector is the fact that all these efforts and all the role that is played by so various diversified CSOs is being recognized because we know that especially the beginning of the pandemic, but then it continued, the role of civic sector to really very fast react on the situation and help especially the most vulnerable members of our societies, and also change the way how the CSOs were operating. I mean, it was huge. Without these activities, many things would collapse even more than it had happened a year ago, starting with the healthcare system that was in huge problems in all our countries, as far as I know. But not only in our countries, I mean, all around Europe. But unfortunately, we cannot see it, at least in my country, that the government is not recognizing the role played by civic sector to the full extent. What means that the government is also not providing financial support. I mean, there were there was some kind of assistance offered by the government, but mostly it was dedicated to the NGOs that are. I mean, the support that was offered by the government was dedicated to the companies, to entities conducting business activity, and some of CSOs are conducting business activities, but it's really small parties. Around like 10% of CSOs in Poland is conducting economic business activity. And also to be able to benefit from this support from the government, you have to conduct business activity only in selected areas like culture, like commerce, sometimes some others. And again, it is also a minority of the CSOs conducting economical activity that is conducting this economic activity within these selected areas of work. And we missed really support that would be governmental support that would be dedicated to keep CSOs maintaining their work, keep their employees, and so on and so forth. There was only one program actually dedicated only to CSOs that was especially launched by our government. Yeah, and that's true. We have to admit that. But through this program, we can see that the needs were like 10 times as large as the level of potential assistance within this program was offered. Yeah, like the program was, I think, 10 million Polish zloty, and applications that were sent to the institution that was distributing these funds was like 10 times more. And That's maybe the most important things. Yeah, maybe I think I had one more thing to add, but I forgot that. So maybe I will get back to this afterwards.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Filip. Taťána, could you please share with us your experience with government?
I think at the time of pandemic, the government didn't think of us at all. It was really crazy. The companies were first. Above all, I think the government shouldn't shoot at its own ranks, but they should thank thousands of people for their work in non-profit organizations. You know, it should communicate positively and appreciate non-profits, that despite all distractions, they still help, and they are in daily operative. They provide really really good services for vulnerable people, for needy people. You know, the pandemic provoked a great wave of solidarity in Czech Republic and support, especially from individual donors. So, you know, my question is why the large volume of public funds is still going to the field of sport in the Czech Republic. That's my question. And I really don't want to talk much about the government, because the situation in Czech Republic, it's not very, it's complicated. So hopefully in future there will be politicians who will participate more actively and who can appreciate the relevance and importance of the non-profit sector in the Czech Republic.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't think that we are able to answer your questions, but I would like to ask Réka to share her insight.
Yeah, I completely agree with my fellow speakers, and the situation is similar in Hungary once again, because we saw an increased solidarity and philanthropy by people. So there's this Hungarian NGO which works for strengthening the civic sector, and they recorded that the donations rose by 200%, and also regular donors doubled, which is great, and this can have a long-term impact. So I would say that people have seen the areas and the people who were left alone, for example, vulnerable groups like homeless people, and they supported organizations who gave food for them. Also, another very, very vulnerable group is children in segregates. According to a recent study, 1/3 of them could not participate in online education because they lacked the tools, the internet access, or they had to look after for younger siblings. And this is a very, very serious problem, because already existing social problems become worsened because of the pandemic, and NGOs worked beyond their means to meet these challenges. And some NGOs who were working, for example, for civic education or community building, they had the communities with food and very basic needs. So I would say that they have adapted quite flexibly to this challenge, and their responsibilities grew very much. And also, there are several ways the government could help. Like Filip said, recognition, that's really important, or Taťána. I would say that would be a step. And also, if not the government, but local governments could also offer help, for example, by offering low price or maybe offices for free at the municipalities. That would help many of us. Or, for example, there were some wage subsidies given by the government, and it completely left out the civic sector. So we were forgotten. That would be nice if we were recognized. But I would also like to say some positive things that happened. For example, there's this new civil strategy by the municipality of Budapest, and they want to build an inclusive decision-making process, which is based on an open registration process. So NGOs could register themselves, and when the issues they have a stake in, then they would be called in to discuss it. And it's happening. We are part of an umbrella organization of NGOs, and I see that really the municipality has been taking steps to include us in decision making and really reacting to what we say. So that's a good initiative, I would say. And we also work together with one of the municipalities right now with the Foundation of Democratic Youth for building the new youth strategy together with young people. So the basic idea is that we involve young people in the process so they can articulate their needs and the problems they see. So together we come up with solutions for that. So I would say that this lower levels, so local governments, is a chance for us to influence policy making.
Thank you for these insights. Focusing on fundraising primarily in the context of partners and donors, both companies and individuals. How has the pandemic affected already existing partnerships? Was there a need to change, for example, the ways of communicating with partners or something more? Taťána, if you could start.
In our case, the established cooperation stopped completely for a while in pandemic time, and the companies reconsidered where to give money to. They wanted to respond to current local needs, what I really appreciate. We waited a long time for their decision. Then we adjusted the call of proposal, because we are a foundation, we open calls of proposal for projects. On the positive side, the companies wanted to help. And they were open to the needs of nonprofits. I really appreciate that. For individual fundraising, we had and have still a strategy such that we select specific organizations and show their stories, whom we help. And in my opinion, it always pays to tell donors, either individual or corporate donors, specifically what the money is going for, to be very concrete. Unfortunately, we lost some gifts and cooperation last year, as most of us in the sector. We couldn't realize some huge actions or benefits, events for donors. So what can we do? It's most of us, we are at the same level now. But I think that long-term partners or partnerships were highly important for us. And also we didn't stop working, during all the pandemic time. So I think one recommendation from our case is to have long-term partnership and don't stop working, and show your partners and your donors that you can do not all of your activities, but most of them. If the pandemic or not, if the situation is better or worse, that you can still do your activities. So it's from my side.
Thank you. Filip, do you also have some experience with fundraising itself to share with us?
I can share with you my observations and also, an analysis. And I will start with follow up to what Réka has said, because it also brings me to the point that I've forgotten previously: the role of local authorities as important partners and supporters of CSOs that really grow also during the pandemic. And this is the point that also I wanted to raise: what is needed, what kind of support is needed to CSOs. It's the support for buying new or maybe even just buying own equipment for online communication, online work, because an issue of I don't know how it is in your country, but in Poland, the majority of organizations, majority of them are small CSOs, mostly working where the work is based on the involvement of the members. Quite often they are using the private equipment, and this equipment is not the new one quite often. And then, especially these times when we all everything moved online, then we find out that also these people don't have money to buy new equipment. And we could see that, for example, the Polish local authorities had these programs buying equipment to local CSOs, or opening up this kind of like competitions program where local CSOs could apply for funding to buy new equipment. And this is but this is also something that brings me to answering your last question about new opportunities, because we observed new opportunities during the pandemic. Anyway, I would say that over the pandemic we can see kind of like complex situations. So from one side is positive, but also there are some negative signs, and this positive sign is related to opening up the new possibilities of new cooperation. For example, we could see in Poland examples of common initiatives undertaken by NGOs in some on the local level in some municipality, together with local IT companies. For example, establishing online platforms when companies could exchange for free their assistance to the CSOs that need some kind of assistance, like making a new website, or maybe helping to prepare a new logo or poster of a initiative or online meeting, something like things like that. So, and it happened during the pandemic, and also, as it was said by other speakers, we could also observe in Poland really growing involvement of citizens in donating to social causes, and it was related to both private individuals, but also companies, and also including some very interesting initiatives that also showed new groups of new members of the society really being involved in working on the social causes, also including supporting CSOs. And this example is related to this action called Hot 16 Challenge too. It was an initiative that was undertaken by hip hop rap singers in Poland that said that they opened up a collection of funds for supporting healthcare system, and then at the same time each hip hop star to take part in this event. They could record their own version of short song commenting current situation, and it was huge action in Poland with hundreds of artists taking part in that, and also including reaching also main politicians of Poland, also recording their own songs, which was a bit strange because the whole action was initiated because the health system was not working, because the politicians didn't organize it in the proper way, and then the politicians take part in this action. I find it a bit contradictory, but anyway, it just shows the popularity, but also shows by the success of this initiative, also shows how interest of local society, of the citizens to support financially also social causes growth during the COVID-19, because it was like huge amount of money have been collected through this activity. I think 8 fully equipped ambulances were bought, and many equipment like safety equipment for the hospitals were also bought by that. But on the other hand, we have also this more long-term processes that I would also like to raise your attention just to finish with that. Because we have to also observe that yes, that's true that there was a growing number of people and companies starting to donate for social causes, but these causes were quite narrow. They were mostly related to fighting with COVID-19, to helping healthcare. But the CSOs are working in many different areas, and those CSOs working outside the most important causes during the pandemic, which is it's quite obvious that these were the main causes supported, but all the CSOs working outside these causes, they missed this support. It's not sure if what will happen in the long term, in the next months, in the next years, especially if we will observe some more important economical influences of the pandemic, because it will mean that also less people and also less companies will have money, will have funds to support social causes, including supporting CSO. So I think we have to remember on this both parts, like these positive aspects of new experiences, flexibility, really many activities of NGOs, but also on the other hand, this long-term possible consequences for the civic sector as well. And I think we have to observe it in the next months or maybe years to see what's going on and to react.
Yes, sure. Thank you for sharing both sides, positive as well as negative. And Réka, the floor is yours now.
Yeah, once again, the Hungarian situation and experience is really, really similar. Like I said, there was this really great proactivity on the part of citizens that donations rose by 200%, but exactly like Filip said, there were some areas which were prioritized. For example, those NGOs who were distributing food to homeless people, or those organizations who were cooking food for doctors and healthcare workers, and those were more visible. And there were several other organizations who were smaller or less well-known who struggled to survive. I believe that a recent study shows that about 10 or 15% of the NGOs could just simply not operate because either there were no funds or because they could not translate their activities to the online space. So yeah, this is a problem, we could say. Regarding donations and fundraising, I would say that communication hasn't changed much. So the same rules apply, that you should keep communicating regularly, thank your supporters, also give the opportunity to donate one time or become long-term donors. And also profiling is really important, because the better you know your audience, the better you can tailor your message, and the message should be clear. What you are using the money, who you are helping it, there should be a call to action. And like Taťána said, it's also important to be visible and to give feedback. For example, when digital tools, laptops were given to children and students, it was recorded, and that had a really positive feedback from the donors. So yeah, I would say that visibility and accountability is really, really important.
Thank you. I think that we all can agree on this. And I would like to ask now Taťána, what were the challenges or obstacles in finding new partners or donors during the pandemic? Can you share with us some examples, even in the case that they were not successful, if you could name why they were not? Thank you.
I'm sharing successful practice rather than obstacles, because I think the last year and previous couple of months were successful for us, and three things work for us. Namely, donor SMS. Maybe you know it. It's the simple way how to donate. And last year, it was 4 million Czech crowns only from the donor SMS campaign for the Help the Children project. It means 150,000 euros. And this year, we have 6 million Czech crowns. It only from donor SMS. It's 230,000 euros. So increase in donations. And as I told or mentioned before, it's simple for donors. Secondly, there is, I think, something like win-win situation where the donor gets something for the contribution. So last year we did a charity run and sold the entry fee, and it was really very successful. This year we opened an e-shop for the sale of merchandise products. And we are not afraid. We have to try, and we will see if it's functioning or if it's okay. But if you don't try, you will never see the effect. And thirdly, and I think it's really important, it's addressing through social media, especially Facebook. It works. It works for us. Otherwise, we also use other way how to communicate, how to be visible as LinkedIn. And targeted email distribution with offer of our courses, education and workshops. So I think the regular communication using modern technology is definitely the right way to go, and I can really recommend. And what was the obstacle? I think only obstacle was lack of IT in our foundation. So we fundraised some notebooks, some laptops, some mobile phones, etc. But nothing more such serious like a big obstacle,
Yeah, great to hear that you're not scared about the situation. Réka, you have already shared with us some tips, and maybe you could add some others.
Yeah, well, I can also talk about obstacles, just to be balanced. I'm happy to share with you how we struggle with fundraising at the Foundation for Democratic Use. So what we do is really complex. We want to provide lasting learning experiences to teachers and mostly students. So our programs are really complex, and we focus on democratic skill development, civic education, and these are things which are not so very known in the Hungarian society, especially civic education. And it is also very hard to measure the impact because, you know, there are some NGOs who can say that I planted 1,000 trees. Okay, I cannot say that I planted 1,000 democratic attitudes in 1,000 people. And even if I could say that, then how do you measure it? So it's really hard because there's no immediate and tangible impact in all cases. So so it's hard to find for us to find services which we can offer, for example, for corporations. And also because the education system is centralized, schools do not have the autonomy to invite us to for example, give workshops or trainings. So this is definitely something we struggle with. But I would say that in general, of course, not counting this pandemic situation, there's not so much of a culture of giving or giving donations in Hungary. If you think about America, there's Giving Tuesday, which is a very well-known opportunity. But in Hungary, it's just not popular enough. However, to finish on a positive note, I would also like to talk about an initiative which is really successful. It's called Edison Platform, and it's about building a network between NGOs and corporate partners. And the point is that selected NGOs get this kind of series of trainings in fundraising, in sales, and communication, so we can better understand each other and speak the same language, and we can establish long-term partnerships. I believe that's a really good initiative.
Thank you, Réka. That was really interesting insight. Filip, the floor is yours now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just very, very briefly, because probably I would be the one that would be more pointing out to the obstacles, also observing what's going on, and I would repeat myself maybe, but just to strengthen my previous observation that first of all, what we can observe is the fact that the growing will and amount of public support to social causes was channeled down to really selected areas, and that it caused a problem for many other CSOs that wanted to maintain their previous activities. That would be one. And the second is related to the activities of many smaller locally oriented CSOs that basically missed the regular normal opportunities to collect money, what happened during the public gatherings, public events of the local city, of like some events organized in the open space, open air, and so on and so forth. So we know that they couldn't organize it, and it was normal place where all these local CSOs were also finding their new supporters, new members, but also collecting funding. And not all of them were able to, definitely not all of them were able to move all these activities online, especially missing relevant equipment. And we have to remember that I mean, probably it was not probably, it was much easier to do those larger, more established CSOs also having employees, paid employees, having their own equipment and different strategies how to do this. So I believe we have to remember about this variety and different members, variety of the sector and different actors in the sector, and especially try to support this smaller ones, yeah, because I believe then when we are living in this very individualized reality, when we are closed in our homes, also in this local CSOs, people get separated, and probably several quite numerous smaller CSOs got dispersed because people didn't have opportunities to interact with each other normally. Yeah. So sorry for being a bit more on the negative side, but I hope that with the last question I will be able to be a bit more positive.
Thank you, Filip. As we are coming to an end, we have 10 more minutes. For those who are watching us, you are very welcome to submit your questions. We will try to answer them in the last couple of minutes. And for our speakers, I have some of the last questions. Which lesson learned from the COVID-19 pandemic would be beneficial for the nonprofit sector in the future? And do you think that the countries from the Visegrad group have something in common in this respect to concentrate on and benefit from it? Or maybe, Filip, if you could start.
Sure, of course. Yeah, and as I promised, yeah, this is a positive. It will be a positive year because I believe that there are many positive experiences because many, on the other hand, to what I was just telling about, many CSOs of different levels also showed quite large flexibility and resilience that could reorient the way of their behavior. They could find out new ways how to speak with their constituencies, with the people on the ground. They also learned in this time what language they need to use, like how simple, direct it should be to really get to the people. But they also learned, as other speakers said, they also learned how to use new tools, online tools, social media to communicate better and to get support and also get understanding of the role they are playing. So I think this is something that would stay with us, that can be used in the future, and we as a sector can build on these experiences, and also especially that those experiences, they are also answering some quite long and quite old but also recognized initial problems of our civic sectors in this part of Europe. That, as I said in the beginning, that as far as I know, in all our countries, the civic sector is quite dependent on the public funding. It's more oriented towards speaking with the authorities, not so much only. I know that it's changing, especially in the last years, but it's still like I think still a lot can be done. So it's still not oriented so much to really talk to the local communities. Still is learning how to diversify the sources of funding, and I think that through this pandemic times, at least some CSOs learned all these things. So how to better communicate the activities, how to diversify sources of funding, and then how to in result how to become more sustainable. So this is something very, I think, some important lessons from in all our region from this period. But what we also need still is better recognition from the authorities, also helping these processes to go further. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Réka, could you please answer these questions too?
Yeah, I agree that the lack of recognition and funds is a problem that all of our countries face, and also that there was a strengthened solidarity between citizens and also between the civic sector. So it's nice to see that people are reacting to the challenges and they see that there's a lack of funding and they step in to help us. But of course, we should not forget that not all the sectors were prioritized. However, I do believe that cooperation with local governments is a really promising thing. So I hope that in the future, this will become more common. And like Filip said, this period has also proved the importance of NGOs and also how flexible we can be, because I believe that most of us adapted to the challenges quickly and in a very innovative way. So we have learned to use online platforms. We have learned to have online workshops and use all these kinds of project management tools and also share documents. And we should not forget that online events have the advantage of having no limit of participants and also no traveling. So it's on the one hand more cost effective if you don't need to, for example, provide food for participants and there's no traveling involved, then those from the countryside can also join. And we also became greener because there's fewer documents to sign. So that's a positive thing as well. So yeah, I'm confident that we have learned many things, and I hope that the donors could be kept, and then we can strengthen cooperation both with citizens, with the civic sector, and with the government and local governments.
Thank you, Réka. I completely agree on this green note you have mentioned. Taťána, I may ask you for your insight.
From my point of view, we had and still have the opportunity to think about which activities and services are essential and which we want to maintain and develop or modify, and which we can leave and stop. It's the right time, do it now. And keep only the key and essential services and activities. Certainly, the sector has shifted in terms of digitization and the use of modern technologies. I think, it was quite difficult for us, for example, to be without any papers and to use more new technologies, modern technologies. But it works. It works without papers. It works without traveling throughout the Czech Republic for education, for example. And I think that CSOs should be aware their own importance, their own strength, and they should use their merit during a pandemic to gain or maintain donor interest. And now we have an opportunity to highlight the key importance of non-profit organizations in a time of pandemic, especially at local level. So I think non-profits should show how they are flexible and how they are good in providing services, and how they provide field care and how they take care of most needy people in the country. Now is good time to do that.
Yes.
So, and last thing, what I recommend is better communication, to be visible, communicate, and showing impact at the local level.
Yes, thank you very much. We have 2 questions from audience. Thank you for it. And the first one goes directly to Taťána. I will read it. Following the number of NGOs in the Czech Republic, Taťána mentioned only a very small part. The last time I read was something around 7,000 NGOs receive money from the state grants. Why is that? Does it mean that the state do not put enough money into the system, or NGOs do not prefer or do not want to be connected with the shame of being partly publicly funded? Okay, so the question is maybe why maybe it's about the shame of the NGOs which don't want to be maybe funded from public?
I don't think so, but I've told that we have 140,000 registered. It doesn't mean they are active, and most of them, they are associations. It means like you have some club, sport club or chess club, or some hobby activity, and you are registered. It doesn't mean that you need money from public funding, you know? So yeah, most of public funded organizations are social services providers registered by the law. So most of them. And the second, what I've already mentioned, that the most volume of the money, of the public money, goes to the field of sport. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you. And the second question, because we are run out of time, just quickly, Filip and Réka, if you could just briefly answer. I will read it also, taking into account that all speakers are from Visegrad countries. I would like to ask, what is their opinion about the possibilities and level of funding of international projects in this specific V4 region, and whether they have any experience with cooperation with foreign NGOs from these countries on some projects. So maybe Réka, if you could start.
We do not have so many international relations, but I do believe that, for example, we have submitted a proposal with Forum 2000, so that's in progress right now, and we certainly would like to work on international cooperations and also at the V4 level more. So that's a really good idea. We do need more people for that, but we are definitely open for it.
Thank you. Filip?
Yeah, sure. Very briefly, I mean, yeah, we have experience. Anyway, first of all, I think I believe there is too less of these possibilities of funding, especially within the region, enable us to cooperate, to exchange our experiences and learn from each other and go further. But there are some possibilities, and we have this experience. I mean, of several numerous projects implemented with partners from all Visegrad countries as well. If you are interested, you can look at the most important, probably the largest, is the Visegrad Fund, which is run by four governments of 4 countries that is funding cooperation between countries. But another thing is the possibility of cooperation of the NGOs from these countries, from our countries, with beyond. And for that, I would just point out for the very end, and to stay positive, as I promised at the very end, for upcoming new possible funding for all CSOs around Europe, what would be this new rights and values program that was established by European Commission and will be supporting CSOs also in more remote areas, smaller CSOs all around Europe, but also in our country. So this it means that there are more funds, more public funds, again coming to support our work, also with the partners from abroad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Filip. Yeah, to sum up, I took some notes. We have tackled some common issues as a lack of recognition from the government, lack of recognition of the real needs of NGOs, the fragmentation of NGOs and polarization of society, but also on the positive note, the way I have mentioned, the strengthening cooperation within the sector, or the new opportunities raising from the public itself. So I would like to thank you all our speakers. It was a brilliant debate with a lot of practicalities and experiences. Thank you very much for sharing. Many thanks goes also to our audience as well for being with us for the last 60 minutes, more than 60 minutes. And as we are right in the middle of the NGO market, you still have 2 more days full of workshops and debates, so don't miss it. And hopefully we will be soon able to meet face to face again during these amazing events. So looking forward, and thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and take care.